Well, I'm still in a hotel. My children are with their in-laws, or they are, with my grandchildren, or they're at home in different places in the United States having a wonderful Christmas. And this is my year to, uh, which it was a very sweet, sweet idea for my husband to want me to come. And he put me up in a hotel so I can be near him. He's a travel nurse, and so anyway, yeah. So I'm in a hotel waiting for him to get off so we can do something. And it was really interesting because the last 2 days he's had to stay late. And he wasn't going to get be able to get to the hotel until about 7:30 anyway. So I was, thinking we would maybe go out to eat or just do something. And he's come back and been so tired that we just basically watched a couple of YouTube videos that were about 15 minutes long, and he fell asleep. And so I mean, I don't mind. Listen, my husband and I have been married for over 40 years, and we dated for 5 years before we got married. So, listen, he had a horrible time at the hospital that he works at. He said a lot of the people the last couple of days have taken off for Christmas that were scheduled, and they just decided to call in sick. So he said it was mass chaos, absolute mass chaos where he was working, and it took him out of it. So we will, since we're Catholic, thank the Lord. Thank you. We're Catholic. Uh, uh, Christmas is a season, and you've got 12 days of Christmas, which are you can make merry in instead of just one. And a lot of people observe the Christmas, a lot of Catholics observe the Christmas season until February. So it's really a season of Christ coming into our hearts, Christ coming into the world as a baby, and our time to reimagine the whole history of mankind through the eyes of now the new covenant and who Jesus is. And everything written in the Old Testament anticipates this very moment in human history. And whether that was, let's say, 4 years of human history, if you're a biblical literist, or if you're a theistic evolutionist, and it could be millions and millions of years with human beings coming in someplace, a type of human beings come in sometime in that frame. The sweet little science teacher that was a nun was the one that was my godmother. They call them just confirmation now. People, they're not really you're more sponsor. I think that's the name. They're the sponsors, so they don't really have to be like a godparent to an adult. But my sweet little sponsor nun, um, what she told me was, because she believes in evolution. She is or was a theistic evolutionist, and she believed God started evolution, and that man did develop. But the theistic evolutionist Catholics just believe that there was a moment that God put a soul into a developed ape, and two developed apes, and that uh, would become the myth of Adam and Eve, even though they do believe there was a literal um, first parents. Now, I don't believe that. I think that's wrong. But that's what you're allowed to think, that if you're Catholic. You don't have to believe. Catholics aren't dogmatic about that. you can believe whatever you want to as a Catholic, at least to some degree. You do have to believe that there was original sin, that there really was a test of original sin. Let's see, my I just went and got a salad um, from an attached, uh, uh, you know, restaurant, and so I am just sitting here, and my boots that I wore are just getting a little uh, tight, so I'm gonna take them off. Well, anyway, so the third day of Christmas, yay! We have the third day of Christmas, and it is wonderful to be on the third day of Christmas. Merry Christmas to all my Catholics out there. So sorry for all the Protestants who Christmas is already over for them. Anyway, so okay, well, there were a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. I have a lot of friends, and I'm noticing something happen. And I'm going to give some context first. This is a frustration for me, so this is not going to be super happy or anything. It's just something I'd like to throw out and get your opinion on. So I'm going to give you the context so you really understand what I'm asking. When I grew up, almost every young man had issues with his father. Uh, Either the main plot or the subplot of almost every movie was a child's needing their dad. It was the broken relationship that they wanted to repair from the child's view. Do you remember Hook? And that's all about the children. The children wanting to have a close relationship with their dad, and that was with what was his name? Oh dear, now I can't remember his name. But anyway, uh, that was one, and so almost all of them, like Yentl. The subtext was her, the girl wanting to learn. It was wanting to. She was missing her father, and she wanted to live up to what her father would expect out of her. And so, but if you go back in the 80s, even the music, like the cats in the cradle and the silver moon, the no spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when we'll get together then, Dad. So anyway, so if you know that song, you will just and the truth is, it was actually true. A lot of young men that were brought up in the 70s and the 80s and even 90s had loneliness. They didn't feel that connection with their father, and so there was a lot of young men who did not know how to be fathers. They were. Let me do this. Push it up just a tiny touch. Okay, so they they had this abandonment issue from their fathers. They didn't feel connected to their fathers, and so that showed very much in the 80s. But it seems to me like there's been a little bit of either a turn around or a addition to that. I don't know if we have solved our daddy issues or not, but what I'm seeing right now is this generation of the ones that I know, and this is ubiquitous. And the reason I can tell you this is, besides friends and family, at least I have, not right now, but I go to the YMCA and swim. And when you're in the room where everybody is changing into their swimming suits and getting ready after they've swimmed, whatever, And they are getting ready to, to leave, and so they're primping and they're sitting in front of the mirrors, and we do a lot of talking because I like to talk when I'm with a bunch of women, and so I'm like, okay, I'm going to just really get some information out of these women. And I just said, how many of you have daughters where you are having some stress with your daughters? Everybody started laughing. Pretty much all of them that had grown daughters were having problems with them, especially if their daughters had children. And so, of course, that springboarded into us talking. And whenever I am waiting in line in the grocery store, or online typing, in a chat, I try to keep my eyes open for this situation because it seems to be so prevalent in not really even among my family per se, but my extended family and my friends. We're having a mommy crisis. Not, I don't know that it's boys, but I think it's girls. And these women, once they get married, or are older, and I'm talking in their 30s, they are, um, they're having these massive problems with their mother. Like, not just having a little bit of problem, they're they're cutting off relationships with their mom. And I have heard this at least from 3 different moms, and they did not know the other one had said it, which I think is very interesting. Now, listen to what this has been a theme of some of these mothers that say, when the mothers reached out to the son-in-law, like, what have I done? What can I do to make this better? Let's get this worked out. The son-in-law will say something of a variation on, I'm sorry, mother-in-law, mom, mother-in-law, whatever even if they're close, they'll say, I'm sorry, I have to protect my wife. And because I've heard that at least 3 times among people who are somewhat close to me, not maybe not super close, but somewhat close to me, it got me thinking, what on earth is happening to where these young women are talking to their husbands in a way that's so disturbing about the moms, that the husbands have to stand in and say, I have to protect my wife from you, her mother. Now, that has not happened with me, just so you know. I am, my children are very aware that I'm a very irritating person, and they love me to death, but I irritate them to death. But because I'm very open, I'm very open, and I think that can be overwhelming to some people. So, I know that I irritate my children. They don't like that I'm on YouTube. They didn't like that I wrote, "It's okay not to be Seventh-day Adventist." They just wanted me to stay safe, "Don't don't cause us, having to come rescue you, mom." I was it was really funny because when I was my children were younger, I got the reputation of hugging homeless people. So my in-laws have heard this. Oh, mom, she hugs homeless people, which is absolutely not true. That has never been true. I don't know where that came up with because my husband would have never let me hug a homeless person. And not to say I wouldn't have done it. They're right in the spirit of it. But I've always I tend to, when I see a homeless person, try to help. I will go talk, I try to talk to him and stuff. Now, lately, my husband has just like put a kibosh on that. No more. Especially when they're sitting in front of our church, because a lot of them absolutely have help. They have lots and lots of help. They are not in need of food or shelter. They want money for other purposes, which I don't, you know. So anyway, but growing up, I would always stop and at least buy them a drink. You know, I'd go get a Coke from or something. And so I got the reputation. So yes, my children think that I am that was reckless of me when they were young because they thought, oh no, now we're gonna have to go pull pull mother off of the homeless person who's grabbed her and won't let her go. So anyway, but this is not a story about me. It's a story about several people I know right now who are really going through absolute hell. And no kidding about that. They are um, experiencing something now. This I'm going to try to talk my way through this, and if you have anything to add to this, I would love to hear it because I'm not going to pretend I understand and or that these are all the same. You know, it's not all the same. But okay, so now this is something I've noticed, and this has been going on for at least 2 generations because I think even I did it to some degree. When kids get married, they're forming a new family. And so they're explaining to themselves, they're looking at this new family and their way of doing things, and they're molding it with what they grew up in. And a lot of times they'll give information to their spouse that thought, well, that's weird. No, 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 that's dysfunctional what your parents did. And they'll go, oh, really, really, and then they'll look at and they'll start analyzing what they did growing up, so that they can create their own family. And that is just something. It's not a bad thing. Honestly, it's not a bad thing. But the problem is a lot of times the in-laws don't fully understand the context of why mom would have said something or why dad would have behaved that way, or that there's a whole lifetime behind everything that this new family member is telling you about their life. And it's easy to judge. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that was terrible your parents did that to you, without really knowing the full extent of what they're saying, and they can't. I mean, and I am not placing blame on anyone in this. What I'm saying is, it's just part of the fabric of life. It's being, they're testing out the new material, and how are we going to raise our children? You know, how are we going to do holidays? How are we going to treat going to church? How are we going to think as a couple and as a new family? And that can set off some triggers. And what will happen is the girl will start venting from a lifetime of building up frustration with maybe something her mother did, something her dad did, but I think it's taken out on the mother, and I'll tell you in a minute why. But so they when they get back together after having been married for a few months, and they've had a chance, the new couples had a chance to kind of rethink things. And usually it happens, around the year mark or maybe the second year they were married, that they start coming and they may even start confronting the parents. And usually it's the mom because you're usually scared of the dad. They're not going to say anything to him. So they'll say to mom, well, mom, why did you do such a thing like that? There's this confrontation. Why did you, the big one right now is, why did you let your daughter go to college and get massively in debt when she wanted to get married and have children? Or she's going to be paying off her student loans for so long she won't be able to have children. um, Even if they do want a career. Uh, Now this new marriage has been uh, saddled with a bunch of horrible financial debt. And this is something that wasn't for my age. We didn't, I was on my own to go to college, and my parents did want me to go to college. So I went to college for a year, and then I took off and worked for a year and paid that off. And I did that the second year too. And then I got married and had children, and then I waited a while to finish up college, or actually, I finished up at a university. And so these kids now, where we weren't thinking about it, our parents did not get involved and say, "Oh, you got to stop. You can't take out any more student loans." Um, they didn't, because it wasn't that expensive to go to college. And then all of a sudden, jump fast forward to these millennials and post millennials, and now they can walk away with $120,000 of student loans that now they have to pay off. And now these people are waiting until they get a lot of it paid off before they get married. And so I know this is a big issue with kids right now against their parents. Why didn't you warn us about this? This has messed up our lives big time. Um, let's see. And another one is, about children. I mean, mm, that whole thing is a huge uh, problem. Lots of women right now they worked, and so they didn't stay home with their children, and so their children. Well, mom, I'm not going to come to you for advice for raising children. You didn't raise me. You worked. So, or, you know, uh, here they start laying out everything that the mother did wrong. Now, I don't know. It's breaking my heart. I mean, it's really breaking my heart seeing my dear friends and loved ones seem to all ubiquitous. It seems to be the stories are very similar, and there is a break in their relationship where a couple of them haven't spoken to each other for well over a year. A couple of them, uh, the husband has wedged his way and said, "You're not seeing your mom. She stresses you out too much. Can't do it anymore." So the husband has stepped in and dominated that and said, "No, no, I'm going to keep you. I'm going to protect you from your mother." And these moms were great moms. Um, yeah, and there's just when a mom and an adult daughter, um, that does cause some friction in control, because every woman wants to feel like she is the queen of her abode, that she's the one that's going to get to decorate it, and she's going to get to have holidays at her house with her husband. She's got all these fantasies, and mom comes in and uh, can mess things up. And the funny thing is, okay, now I can tell this. I'm sure I can tell this. Nobody's going to be upset, but a lot of young girls think they to respect their adult women now. They have their own homes, but they haven't made that transition from I've got to obey my mom to I've got to honor my mom, and they don't know how to make that transition. That's very difficult for them. And so there's tension, and you can trigger your daughter really easily, and your daughter will say, "Well, do I have to obey you?" And you as the mom are like, "No, you don't have to, baby. You're an adult woman. You're paying off your student loans. You've got a job. What are you talking about? You don't need to obey me." But these young girls don't understand it, and they're not yet ready to be your friend. They can't quite go from daughter to adult daughter who gets to be your friend. Now, I hope that there are many, many, many relationships out there that are perfect and you don't have these problems. And God bless you. I'd love to hear why you think that is. So I can pass this on. Let me know. Write something in the comments and say, here is what I believe helps that transition from a child believing that they're, that child to that woman with her mother. I would enjoy that very, very much. But now, the last thing I want to say on this topic is I do think for some, and this is a guess on my part, I don't feel super comfortable saying this because it's really just I'm wondering out loud. So let me know what you think of this. These young girls, I think sometimes they blame mom for taking away power from their dad. I think that they're seeing these women that are being strong. They believe they have emasculated their fathers. They blame it on the mom, or it's possible that they're just mad at their dad and they're taking it out on their mother. And so I'm pondering these different things, and so I'd love to hear your view. And as a Catholic, who is a Catholic saint that we could bring into our prayers to Christ, who will pray with us about these relationships and will help give us wisdom as moms who have young women who are newly married and who are going through this transition. So that is all on that subject. And I know there was another subject. Okay. So my husband and I read the Bible. We have been reading the Bible together every morning for many, many, many years. Well into when we were still Protestants. And I came across. Hold on just a minute. I came across some passages this morning. Not that it's anything new, but it just struck me different. You know how when you've read one, you've read like a book in the Bible, maybe Genesis, many, many, many times, and then all of a sudden you read it and you think, I think I'm understanding this part. And there's many different facets. The Bible is like a diamond, and it has many different ways that the light reflects, and you can see its beauty from many different angles. And so it's nothing that you don't already know, but it's just a new way of looking at it. And so this morning, not this morning, but well, this isn't exactly what I was reading this morning, but I had a reason for reading this. I was doing some other stuff, and I looked up Mark 13, and I just started reading it. I'm going to start on verse 30. Oh, I'll start on 32. So it's Mark 13:32. And I'm not sure what NIV. This is the NIV. Quote, but about the day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So when Christ was talking about what was going to happen in the last days while he was a man on earth, he didn't know the hour. He did not know when these things were going to happen. So anyway, but only the Father knew. So verse 33 says, be on guard, be alert. You do not know when that time will come. So here we go. Jesus is on earth in the flesh, and he's saying that you don't know when this world is going to come to an end, when the final judgment is. 34 starts. Jesus says, it's like a man going away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge. each with their assigned tasks, and tells the one at the door to keep watch. So when you think about that, that's pretty clear. He doesn't say, okay, everybody, you're all watchmen. I'm putting you all at the door. Just go to your own door and go stand at your own door and be your own watchman. No. He said, I'm going to go back here. He puts his servants in charge, each with their assigned tasks. So I would say we're all servants of God. What is our assigned task? Are we all supposed to be watchmen at the door? It says no. He said, the one that I assigned at the door, keep watch over the door. So all of these people that want to make religion and their relationship with God only a singular, it's me and Christ. He did not set up a church. He did not he did not expect us all to be in one church. We're kind of all on our own. It's all invisible. Think about that, what Jesus just said. You don't know when I'm going to come, Jesus said. It's like a man going away, and he leaves his house and puts his servants in charge. Each with their assigned task. So that kind of sounds like he's setting up a kingdom, isn't he? He's setting up a home of family. He is, I very much see this as apostolic succession. Because not one person can have that role for the 2,000 years that that since Jesus left us. It was obviously meant to be multi-generational. Okay, so that is one of the things that I found this morning. I think I just deleted the one. I think I just deleted the one, the one that I was going to say next. Let me see here. Da 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 da. Okay, I found it. All right, and here was the other. I had another interesting thing. Okay. I was raised believing that Adventists, at least I believe that they believe, I'm sure they believe, at least doctrinally, they kind of have to believe if they're going to go with the church, that the Israelites worshiped in the synagogues. So, all right, so we got somebody, Princess Warrior Girl 2024, who says, Christmas is a pagan and idolatrous. Read Jeremiah 10, 2-4. Those who practice these demonic holidays will be judged. Okay, well, I believe that the Lord did not put us in charge of interpreting the scripture for everyone. I believe he has a church that he set up, and he said to his apostles, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and you apostles, whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And he also said, those who believe me will listen to you. So if they listen, if they want to listen to Christ, they're going to listen to the apostles. And so what the apostles did is, as the church was moving across the world, bringing the good news to everyone, they didn't shut down everything that was good. You see, all good things come from God. And just because an idol says, oh, worship those trees. You don't cut the trees down. The trees, you just teach the people. The trees, God made those trees. Now, of course, there is that legend that they cut down, the bishop cut down the idolatrous tree. I think it was in Norway or something, like one of St. Olaf's saints during the time of St. Olaf. So occasionally they had those times where we cut down the tree, but normally they would say, no, let's just take the beauty, the wonders that God created, and let's turn it back to using these things that are not towards the true God. If what you're doing is not intrinsically wrong, then it's okay to give it to God. Now, I can show you in the scripture King David, when he would go plunder all the different pagan, blasphemous, horrible, idolatrous nations around him. He would plunder and he would bring all the gold and the beautiful goblets and stuff, and he would pass them either through water or through fire to make them holy and sanctify them, and then he would put them in the temple. So when God gives you, don't let all this, God is in charge. Don't let all these, if you're in Christ and you're in his family, don't fear paganism. If it's not intrinsically bad, and what I mean by intrinsically bad, if you are not doing what the commandment says not to do, serving a God, if you are not, as they did to Moloch, putting your children and passing them through fire in honor of Moloch, what you can do, it's good. And Christmas is a celebration of Christ's birth. They did not, I know that there is this idea that Christmas is a pagan holiday because of the winter solstice and all this kind of stuff. But the truth is, the early church fathers, if you'll read them, the early church fathers got in their mind that Jesus was conceived on the day that he was crucified, which they thought was about March 25. So that's what they thought. And so they said, okay, go 9 months from March 25. I think it's March or April anyway. And it's December 25. And that is what they used. The early Christians did not use the pagan for at least that. And even if they had, let's just say, even if they had, which they didn't, but if they had taken a day and said, we're giving it to Christ, that day is of Christ because God is in charge of all days. I don't care. There's a lot of people that worship God on Saturday, which Catholics do too, but I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and they went to worship service, and they believe any other day is wrong to worship God on. Okay, at least corporate worship. And so, and that's going to go really well with what I'm just about to read. So they believed Saturday was the correct day. But you know what? Every single day of the week goes back to a god, Saturnalia. They're either Roman gods or they were Norse gods. So everything we do do you know that way before Christianity came in, the pagans had oracles. They had prayers. They had miracles. They had all of it before we did. Worship has been around from the beginning. They just stole it from Christ and from God, the true God, and they used it for the wrong gods. And God is just simply taking back what is his. So this is how I would read what you said, Princess Warrior Girl. Don't be afraid, as long as it's not intrinsically wrong. It's not, trees are not intrinsically wrong. A day is not intrinsically wrong. It is only if you worship it and that you serve it, and perhaps you go to it for answers, like praying to the dead and saying, oh, give me information. on what I don't know. Here, So anyway, okay, I'm gonna answer that one. I think I'm done with that. And then I want to read you the other thing that I found. Okay, I think she left. She was like, "Oh, I didn't like that answer," so she's gone. All right. John 4. The context is Jesus went to get some water in Samaria. And at the well, he met a woman and he told her everything she had done. And Jesus said to her, because she was like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. This is the time that you're a Jew." And he says, if you knew who I was, you would ask me for a drink of water." And he said, "Go call your husband and come here. Come and come back here with your husband." And the woman answered and said, "Uh, I have no husband." And Jesus replied, "You've said it well. You've been honest. You have no husband. But the fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the one who you're with now is not your husband." Now, instead of getting offended and yelling at Jesus, instead of, "How dare you talk to me like that?" She didn't do that at all. She said, "Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet." So she was very humble. She knew her sin. She had to go. Actually, the time of the day that she was out there was when other women weren't out there because she was shunned from the good society. And so she understood the pains of being an outcast. But this is what she said next, which I find extremely interesting. She said, "Our fathers, the Samaritans, worshipped on this mountain. And you Jews say that Jerusalem is the place where we ought to worship." And Jesus is saying, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know." Now, I want to rewind this because this is interesting. Adventists believe that when Jesus would go to the synagogues on Sabbath, that he was there to worship. He was there because this was the right day of worship. When in fact, number one, you could only worship in the Temple of Jerusalem. That was the only place that Jews were allowed to worship. And the synagogue was not considered a place to worship. The synagogue was a civic center. Now, you could go there to pray, you could go there to do your readings. It was like a great big Sabbath school or Sunday school. It very often, that's where they would have their trials, and not just trials, but they would actually do the punishment of the trials there in the synagogue. It was not considered a holy place like the temple. You could not worship in the synagogue. You could only worship in the temple. And furthermore, they had worship to God in the temple 24/7. And we know this by a text in Leviticus, and I can't remember, but they were talking about how the choir, the choir would sing, and they had, I think it says they had several groups of choirs. The Levitical choirs would be broken up into, like, I think something like 200 men, and they would rotate all day and all night because they would be having worship at the temple 24/7. And so it wasn't just one day. The Jews were to rest 1 day a week, but they worshiped every day. Or let me put it this way, the people that were close to the temple. Now, if you were too far to go to Jerusalem every day to go to the temple to worship, you had to go 3 times a year. And but the people that were there in Jerusalem, the new Christians, it said in Acts, I think it was either 1 or 2, they went daily to the temple. They broke bread in people's homes, which was the Eucharist, and they went daily to the temple to worship. So, when Jesus, I think this backs up this idea that it was temple worship that was happening. It was not synagogue. You couldn't worship in the synagogue. And so and this there's many texts, but this one's one that I found this morning and just reminded me. I wanted to tell you guys. They said she said, this woman, the Jews say that in the temple is a place where one ought to worship. Okay, not synagogues. So anyway, it would be only after the temple was uh, destroyed in AD 80 that the Jews got this idea, well, we're going to need someplace where we can do Torah readings and prayers. And they already were doing that in the synagogues. And they were doing it more than just on Saturdays. They had, I think, 3 times a week where it was normal. They needed a quorum, but it was normal to go to the synagogue and worship. I'm sorry, and pray. And so they substituted the temple worship. They decided they were going to do prayers and Bible readings in the synagogue as a placeholder until they could rebuild the temple. And so today, that's what they're still doing. And so their new covenant, it doesn't have the ability to worship God fully because there's no lamb that they can kill to have their sins forgiven. And so they created a new covenant that they are and now use until the old covenant can be restored and they can go back to the sacrifices. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up, that Jesus didn't go to the synagogue to worship. That's not what he was doing. He rested on Sabbath, yes, but he worshiped when he could worship daily when he was in Jerusalem, and then he would go wherever he was in Capernaum or wherever he was. He would then come down the 3 times a year that they were required holy days for young men between 12 and I think 60. Okay, well, I don't see any more. Anybody else want to gab before I take off? And I love to talk about. I wrote a book. It's called "It's Okay Not to Be a Seventh Day Adventist," and it was really interesting because when I was I had a large major, 2 of them, but one was much more interested in it than the other, the book I wrote about Adventism. And but they wanted to put it in the cult section, and I was very unhappy with that. I do not. I'm the word cult is just not a helpful word. I don't care if you think Adventism is a cult or not. It's just not a helpful word when you are trying to discuss Adventism with an Adventist. Why would you say that? In the Catholic faith, the word cult does not have a pejorative meaning. You can have the cultus of Christ because the early church was considered the cultus of Christ. So that's much more a Protestant word. So I try to refrain from using it. And I was still a Protestant when I had my book published. But the people that were helping me edit it and publish it, They didn't want their name on it. They said, look, you are not strong enough against the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We do not want to, unless you are going to say it is not okay to be, no, it is, yeah, it is not okay to be a Seventh-day Adventist. That's how they wanted me to, it to read. They wanted me to come down hard on Seventh-day Adventists and say, no, you know, yes, it's okay not to be a Seventh-day Adventist, but they thought, no, it is not okay to be a Seventh-day Adventist. And so I fought with my publishers over this, and I just said, look, I appreciated, I would rather just not take the mainstream publishing and publish it myself than to destroy the audience I wrote it for. Because I think when my mantra, that was how I got through it, leaving Adventism. When I was convinced with evidence from the Bible and history that it was not the church that God wanted me in, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, my heart was broken. It was a trauma, a world-class trauma for me to find the courage to leave Adventism. Because first of all, I loved Adventism. I absolutely loved it. I didn't mind being an Adventist. They were nice people. It was like being in a Mayberry RFD that just went to church on Saturday. You know, my family wasn't that big into into Ellen White, who was the prophetess, and that's the reason a lot of people want to consider it a cult, because they follow the Seventh Adventist Church follows the prophetess Ellen G. White. Anyway, so I really, really fought hard with a lot of people to say it's okay to be a Seventh. You can be saved. I believe you can be saved and be a Seventh Adventist. Uh, and that's not really even up to me. I shouldn't even say that. It's not up to me who's saved and who isn't. God knows who's going to be saved. He's the one in charge. But at this point, I am not convinced by anything, even considering being a Catholic. You know, I'm not convinced that even a priest told me he said, oh well, the priest did not think Adventists were lost. So anyway, so I had that book out, and I worked very, very, very hard on that book, and it is at Amazon. And look it up. It's called "It's Okay Not to Be a Seventh-day Adventist," and that was what I kept saying to myself for 10 years as I was leaving Adventism. Every day, it's okay not to be Seventh-day Adventist. It's okay not to be Seventh-day Adventist, because I didn't think it was okay. When you're taught you're the sole remnant, and that every single Christian will one day become a Seventh-day Adventist, or they will be marked with the Antichrist number of 666. Then that's what I was raised on, and it was very the reason I wrote the book is so that those who are convinced that Adventism is not where God wants them, read the book. I think it will help my researching and uncovering certain things. May be very helpful for you. And so if you want to, and I don't ask for money. And the fact is, I used to have a lot more followers. I don't as much now because I don't post. And once you don't post very much, you get lost. The algorithm doesn't put you out anymore. But so if you would like to help me buy my book, go onto Amazon and put in Teresa Beam, B as in boy, E-E-M. Whoop, somebody's calling me. And I don't even know where that is. I can't even tell where that's. So, So, and put that in and buy my books, because I've got more than that out. So, I think we're done. I was going to try to keep it under an hour, and I may do it one more time before I go home, because I'm here because my husband's working over Christmas, over the Christmas holidays. and he wanted me to be near him, in a hotel near him, so we could see at least each other in the evenings. So anyway, God bless you. Please pray for me and my family and all those sweet little women out there who are having problems with their daughters. They need our prayers. You just pray for him, for all the mommies in the world and all the daughters, so they will be able to bridge the gap and understand each other in love. So, and then I'm praying for you. So, bye bye. Have a nice day 3 of Christmas.